The Skibird is the go-to aircraft for tough jobs in frozen places, from pole to pole. The world's largest ski plane is heading to Greenland.
You keep an eye on those throttles.
On a vast ice sheet, scientists' lives and livelihoods depend on these planes.
If we didn't have the Skibirds to support a project like this, we just couldn't do it.
Now, their expedition is in its final days, and vicious winter storms are on the way. The Skibirds face a daunting task: get the team and their gear out before they're buried under snow and ice.
8 now.
It's a steamy summer morning at the National Guard base in Schenectady, New York. But this LC-130 Hercules is not going to the beach.
I know, but on the rim. Hey, but you got more.
Grab this strap, would you?
Master Sergeant Bill Madrian and his team are fitting it with a 2,000-pound ski.
Again, guys, you do not want to put your finger in there, because if something happens, these arms, for some reason or another, slam down, slice the finger off.
Wait, is he cranking the gear up outside?
Oh!
It's a balancing act of precision and brute force.
Sometimes they go on, they slide on like butter.
I think we're right in the sweet spot right now. You have to go in and up with this. There you go.
Other times they fight with you every inch of the way. Come on, one more time.
There are only 10 modified Hercules Skibirds, and they're all based here with the 109th Airlift Wing in upstate New York. 3 are heading to Greenland to evacuate climate scientists from the ice cap. Takeoff is in 48 hours. Piloting one of the Hercs is Captain Eric Wood.
What I love about flying the LC-130 is the how unique the mission is, how unique the aircraft is. It's the largest ski aircraft in the world. Handles like a small airplane. It's kind of like being a bush pilot, but in a large military aircraft.
The crews of the 109th only know one season, winter. 6 months near the North Pole, 6 months at the South. Their planes are the only lifeline for scientists studying climate change. Flight engineer Corey Palmetier has the huge responsibility of making sure their plane is good to go before he joins Eric Wood on the flight deck.
The only way I can verify the airplane is safe to fly is by looking at every piece and part that I can physically see and make sure that there's no damage.
The Hercules lives up to its name. It can carry 2 armored personnel carriers. It stretches 30 meters long and stands 12 meters high. Its high lift generating wing is 40 meters tip to tip. The Herc has proven itself indispensable in extreme environments. The first one rolled off the Lockheed assembly line in 1955. More than 2,000 planes later, they're used for everything from troop transport to air-to-air refueling, and from firebomber to aerial gunship. During the Cold War, the ski variant supplied remote radar stations across the far north. And decades later, the Herc is still the aircraft of choice for polar missions. 90 minutes from takeoff, Loadmasters Nick O'Neill and Logan Brennan are positioning the supplies and equipment they'll need for the operation. The weight of the cargo and where it sits have a direct impact on how the plane handles.
We're a little different than a regular C-130. Instead of a usual load plan, it's more light in the front, heavier in the back, giving it a little back weight just so we can get the nose up when we're going taking off.
That's a real big angle, dude.
From Schenectady, New York, the Skibirds will fly over 3,000 kilometers over eastern Canada, across the Davis Strait, and into Sunderstrom Air Base on Greenland's west coast. Every summer on Greenland's ice cap, scientists gather to peer into the past. Buried under more than 2 kilometers of layered snow and ice is a record of the Earth's climate, dating back over 100,000 years. Scientists like Professor Dorte Daliensen are on the cutting edge of climate research. They've been drilling into the ice cap for the past 4 months. But the brief Arctic summer is fading fast. They've got to pack up their ice core samples and get out before winter returns.
The Skibirds, they're just everything. If we didn't have the Skibirds to support a project like this, we just couldn't do it. So they are simply our lifeline, and they are so great to work with.
Back in the US, the crew is doing a final weather check for their 6-hour flight.
Hey, Pat, can you hand me the charts for St. John's?
Aircraft Commander Eric Wood briefs his team.
Looks like we have our flight planned at flight level 170, 270 knots, through Pepkey on our way up to Sonderstrom. We're following an alternate of St. John's. We're carrying enough fuel for a couple hours of holding. Correct.
Right.
How much fuel do we need?
We need 51.
Navigator Lieutenant Colonel Samantha East's calculations call for 51,000 pounds, 23,000 kilos of fuel. More than enough to make the trip. But Captain Wood is always looking for places to put down in case of mechanical problems.
That's extremely critical. Luckily today with a Skibird, with an airplane with skis on it, we do have options to go land in the snow if we ever absolutely needed to as an emergency.
30 minutes to takeoff. Wood makes one last inspection.
Most problems with an airplane you can notice from a distance when you're walking out to the airplane, whether a wingtip is leaning to one side or not. They'll tell you whether or not you got soft tire or flat tire. And make sure I have a clear taxi route out of parking. And I do.
Schenectady ground, good morning. So we'll be requesting runway 4 for takeoff.
Here, 88, Schenectady ground, runway 4, taxi via Gulf 28 kilo.
Wood and his crew are the first flight out. The other 2 Skibirds will follow. The Herc may handle like a bush plane in flight, but on the ground, it moves more like a transport truck.
Here, 88 Schenectady tower, runway 4, wind calm, clear for takeoff.
At full throttle, it takes 18 seconds to reach 100 knots. The Herc is heralded for its short takeoff performance, and the high-lift wings take it into the air after using just 900 meters of runway. Once airborne, Loadmaster Logan Brennan has a new assignment. While the pilots are scanning the horizon, he's their eyes in the back.
We're looking to make sure there's no leaks, hydraulic, oil, fuel, just inspecting the underside of the wings, looking at the exhaust, trying to, if you can, look at the back of the engine, the cells to the front of the engine, and just really making sure there's nothing abnormal going on out there.
Just over 10 minutes into the flight, and the pilots take the Herc through 15,000 feet. There are 7 crew members on board, but the buck stops here with Captain Wood.
You're managing the mission as the aircraft commander. You try to keep the big picture, make sure the mission's progressing as it should.
Sitting over Wood's right shoulder, flight engineer Corey Palmatier is scanning the dials.
Well, my primary role is to operate and monitor all the systems on the aircraft, ensure everything is operating within their safe operating range.
Beside Wood, co-pilot Pat Newton is a relative newcomer to the cockpit.
I was a loadmaster back in the day, one of those guys. I joined in 2002, and I went away to pilot training in 2008, finished a couple years ago, so it's a blast.
4 hours after takeoff, the Herc has reached the Davis Strait, an aerial no man's land. This is the end of radar coverage until they reach land again. Wood and his crew are now invisible to air traffic controllers and must report their position based on their own instruments. Sam East and Rachel Limebaugh use their GPS and a slightly older technology, a periscopic sextant.
Right now, Rachel is taking a celestial shot, and she's actually measuring the height of the sun above the horizon. It's the same way that Columbus discovered America. We're just a little bit better at it than he was. The reason we do that is because we're in polar regions. If you run into problems with your onboard computer systems and navigation systems, there's nothing out there to help you. There's no radar, there's no ATC, there's no land-based navigation aids. It's just you.
With 1,000 kilometers of Davis Strait behind them, the coast of Greenland is now in sight.
It's starting to look really pretty.
That's gorgeous.
Well, we've just turned over this point, Mike Alpha right here, right on the coast of Greenland. And now we're headed inland here to Sonderstrom. The weather looks good. So we're going to be able to get below the clouds up here in just a little bit, and you'll get a good view of Greenland.
Sunderstrom Air Base is a relic of World War II and notorious for its sloping runway. For inbound pilots, landing on a hill creates a dangerous optical illusion. Some who failed to compensate have paid with their lives. On Greenland's ice cap, winter storms are just weeks away. 3 specialized Hercules Skibirds are en route, ready to evacuate climate scientists from their remote research stations.
Skier 73, runway 09, clear to land.
Clear to land on 9, Skier 73.
Eric Wood and his crew are inbound to Greenland's Sunderstrom Air Base. The dramatic uphill slope of the runway creates a dangerous optical illusion.
Well, optical illusions can cause a lot of problems during landing. So this runway with a slope can give you the illusion that you're coming in too steep and make you want to get lower than you should be.
Pilots can make one of 2 mistakes. Flare too early for landing, and they'll run out of airspeed and crash to the ground. Or come in too fast and steep, and they risk damaging the plane.
Brakes slightly.
Skier 73, 180, backtrack and taxi left off on taxiway Delta.
For currency, we have to land here so many times within a year to maintain the currency for it, because it is such a unique airport with so many optical illusions. Welcome to Greenland, home of the LC-130.
With all 3 Skibirds safely on the ground, the real work can begin. The officer in charge is Major Carlisle Norman, a 15-year veteran with the Skibirds and a master of logistics.
The worst case scenario, I'll get your second engineer for your pre-flights. 9-5. Alpha 1.
In addition to planning the final pull-out flights from the science camps, Norman needs to train his crews for their next assignment. In a few short weeks, they'll be on the other side of the world, flying ski missions in Antarctica.
My job is to make sure that I give them what they need to do their job, make sure I keep the airplanes up and running, make sure I keep them not working long hours. My goal is always to make sure that I am treating my people as good as I can do it.
This morning, he's briefing Aircraft Commander Eric Wood and co-pilot Pat Newton on their mission to Neem, a remote research station in northern Greenland. It's 2.5 hours due north. What lies between is the unforgiving ice cap. Wood's evacuation flight, the second last of the season, will also carry in supplies for next season.
All right, so you're taking out 6 passengers to the camp and 2 pilots, and you're going to bring 4 pilots and about 10 passengers back from the camp.
All right. It's pretty warm out there today.
It is. But with those temperatures and the 8 bottles, you guys should have no problem getting off the snow.
Great.
ATO, or assisted takeoff bottles, are packed with solid rocket fuel. Once ignited, 8 bottles give the Herc the explosive kick it needs to get airborne.
We might not be able to take off with the power we have available, or the snow could be too sticky. We're able to strap these onto our aircraft, and they provide about 8,000 pounds of thrust, which is about the equivalent of adding a 5th engine to the airplane, and should give us the few critical knots we'll need to accelerate off the snow.
Weather is the biggest obstacle when flying into the frontier, making a routine landing a potential disaster.
Some of the issues we're going to have today landing up at Neem is anytime there's an overcast layer of clouds, the white clouds and the white snow on the ground blend together, and we always talk about how it's like landing inside the middle of a ping pong ball. You have no reference on the ground to judge your height other than our radar altimeters we're using.
There are no other airfields between here and Neem, so managing their fuel is critical. Rachel is calculating the bingo fuel number. It's not an exact science. Rachel has to factor in the possibility of flying a holding pattern in case of bad weather at Neem, but still needs enough to get home safely.
When I give the aircraft commander our bingo fuel for what fuel we're looking for, to be like, we can't mess around on the ground anymore, we need to take off.
04, turn it. 07. When you check on the tower, just make sure you let them know we got the bottles when you get back taxi the runway.
The 80 rockets are high explosives. Ground control gives the Herc lots of room to maneuver, making sure that other planes keep their distance.
Roger.
For this takeoff, co-pilot Pat Newton is at the controls. The wheels are retracted into the fuselage, but the skis are not.
Landing gears up, skis are up. Go. Flaps up, flaps up.
Exposed to headwinds, they create enough drag to limit the Skibird to 300 knots on the flight north, about 10% slower than a regular Herc.
360. Clear trim.
Clear trim.
On the ground at the Neem Ice Research Station, the science team is racing against time.
We need to align all the corners before we sort of pull it tight.
In a few short weeks, vicious winter storms will seal this place tight. For the last several weeks, they've bored hundreds of ice cores. Camp leader, Professor Dorte Dahl Jensen, has overseen some dramatic firsts for their research.
This is one of the last ice cores we drilled, and actually the reason why we came this year to drill the very, very deep ice that we find right at the bottom, the interface between the rock and the ice. So this is from the depth 2,538 meters.
The scientists are drilling into the Earth's history, retrieving samples of an ancient forest that once covered the now frozen landscape.
Because we have all the biological material sealed in the ice, it's totally untouched and frozen down, so it's so well preserved. Can't find anything like that in any other sources. So this is really, really exciting to come home and study.
Their research time has been invaluable, but it's quickly running out.
We're getting close to the time where we're closing camp, so we're building the pallets with all the equipment we need to send back to our labs in Europe and the US and Canada.
But the scientists will have to wait. Captain Wood and his crew are nearing Neem camp, and the weather has deteriorated.
They have whiteout conditions. We can't land on that, so we're probably going to set up the holding pattern over the camp, and hopefully the weather will be clear. We'll be able to land.
We take off in the morning being very optimistic that things are going to work out for the best. It's not always the case, and that's exactly what's happening today. So we're going to give it the best shot we can. Hopefully the timing works out, but if not, we always have tomorrow. We err on the side of caution.
Captain Wood enters a holding pattern high above Neem. If they circle for more than an hour, they'll be putting themselves in jeopardy, burning the fuel they'll need for the trip home. Back at Sunderstrom, Major Norman is dealing with another piece of bad news.
Copy 95, you guys got a fuel leak. I'll run in and talk to the SOM. I want you guys to go ahead and pack it up and come on inside for now. I'll see you inside.
We'll be right in. Gear 5
A pre-flight inspection revealed a problem with one of the other Hercs.
Let's see, status 95. I'm being told they got a fuel leak.
Yep, the guys are out troubleshooting it now. It looks like the left-hand fuel manifold's leaking. We're going to check availability of part, and we're probably going to end up having to can it.
Okay.
Norman can't afford to have any of the Skibirds out of commission.
Try not to operate out in the ice cap without having at least one or two other birds as SAR birds, so search and rescues. Because if that plane were to go down on the ice cap, we wouldn't have search and rescue capability within 24 hours to go out and rescue them.
Master Sergeant Frank Medea is under the hood.
Whenever you have a fuel leak, you want to make sure you take care of it right away because, you know, it could be catastrophic. You can lose lives. If it were to happen in flight, that would be a very bad thing. You know, very bad. And I found this hose was leaning up against the bleed air manifold here. They had burnt the casing on the outside of it, and it was all wet and Fuel was oozing out of it.
Back in the US, this would be no big deal. But in Greenland, spare parts are hard to come by. With one Skibird unable to land and another stuck on the sidelines, the final mission of the season is on thin ice. Holding over a remote science camp on Greenland's ice cap and low on fuel, Captain Eric Wood wants to attempt a landing.
Visibility is down to almost nil, whiteout conditions there. We've already begun our descent. So at this point, we're going to continue the approach and take a look and just hope that it's cleared up by the time we get there.
If the crew decides to abort, they'll have no choice but to head back to Sunderstrom Air Base. The Skibirds were designed to operate in extreme conditions, and co-pilot Pat Newton lives for this type of flying.
There's no other aviators in the world that have these. There's only 10 aircraft, and we have all of them. So it's a unique mission, unique capability. Not a lot of people get to experience this type of stuff.
To get his Skibird safely down on the ice cap, Captain Wood is relying on the plane's radar and his navigators, Rachel Linebaugh and Samantha East.
We have a low ceiling and 2 miles of visibility. So Rachel is going to be doing airborne radar approach, which will be talking the pilots down into the camp.
The onboard radar gives the crew a rudimentary picture of ground features and instant feedback about their altitude on the approach. Radar waves emitted from the base of the plane are bounced off the ground below, giving the crew their precise altitude to within 2 feet. Cutting through clouds, they've spotted the approach flags leading to the skiway.
You're starting to get flags. There they are.
I got the flags. Hallelujah. Right now I'm just lining up for the camp.
Okay.
A low-tech alternative to the landing lights of an airport, the flags start 3 kilometers from the skiway threshold.
We're looking at flags, and that's it for our reference to the ground. And it's really hard to tell how high you are off the ground, besides looking at our instruments.
Okay, approaching 4 miles. Recommended altitude is 8670.
Rachel calls out the altitude until the moment of touchdown.
100.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Flaps coming up. Off board, good.
Prepare to offload.
Knowledge load mesh.
Gear 42, welcome to Neem.
Now comes one of the Herc's coolest tricks, the combat offload. A way to get stuff out of the plane in a hurry. Important if someone is shooting at you, or if you're running out of gas.
An offload is a quick and expedient way of getting the cargo off the aircraft because time is precious when we're on the snow because you don't want to burn so much fuel.
Hercules combat offload checklist.
Gotcha.
Aircraft Commander Eric Wood guns the engines, and the cargo pallet shoots out the back of the Hercules.
Power.
It's fuel to be stored for next year's research. An ice field is no ordinary airport. Any mechanical glitch here, and you're stranded, which is why they leave the engines running. But burning 1,300 liters an hour means they need to move fast. Pallets and an aerial drone are hustled on board. But their efforts come up short. Sam's calculations show they no longer have enough fuel to make it back to base. Back at Sunderstrom Air Base, a potential rescue plane is grounded because of a broken fuel line. Master Sergeant Carl Burkhardt and Staff Sergeant Eric Fuller are cannibalizing a line from the spare engine they bring along on every mission.
You okay?
Please don't twist it that direction.
Okay. Want me to go the other way? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I gotta pull the collector.
We have a supply of spare parts up here, but unfortunately this part isn't one of them that we carry because it doesn't fail that much.
But getting the fuel line out and reinstalled will take hours. Back at Neem, the crew are out of options. They have no choice but to take fuel from the camp's own emergency supply. Gassing up on the ice field is called hot refueling. No wonder.
Whenever you mix
gas, 4 running engines, and a lot of people, there's always risk of a fire or injury, so we're always very cautious and careful. Because it took longer to load the aircraft than we expected, we had to take about 1,000 pounds of gas from the camp in order to have enough fuel to make it back to Sonderstrom.
Sitting idle can cause another problem. The weight of the herd creates a layer of water beneath the skis that can freeze solid. Raising and lowering them prevents them from getting locked in place. Today's weather conditions are also conspiring to make this takeoff a challenge.
Snow versus wheels. Wheels is pretty much the same surface all the time. Snow, depending on how the sun's hitting it, it creates a different situation every time you try to take off. So we'll have to vary flap settings and do a number of different things to try and take off. But today it looks like we're going to have to use some ADO to get off the ground.
The ADO, or assisted takeoff rockets, are a last-ditch effort. A one-shot deal that either works or leaves you stuck on the ground. Captain Wood is going to need the ADO bottles and every inch of the 3.5-kilometer skiway.
When we do every ski takeoff, gets your heartbeat racing and almost takes your breath away once you get airborne.
Feels like the airplane just slides from side to side. Just does not seem like any kind of normal takeoff where it's just like you're on the center line of the runway and you're up and you're going.
Eric has to put it all on the line to get his plane and crew back in the air.
5 knots.
Plus 70%.
65 knots.
8 now.
On an ice field in Greenland, a Hercules Skibird is fighting to get airborne. The snow is sticking like gum to its Teflon skis.
Here we go.
Flight engineer Corey Palmatier readies the assisted takeoff rockets. A flick of the switch will ignite an extra 8,000 pounds of thrust.
6 knots.
It's a one-shot deal. 14 seconds of burn, and they're either flying home or staying put.
5 knots.
Plus 70%.
65 knots.
8 now. You're up.
Go.
I should have gone plus 50.
The first load of scientists is on its way back to Sonderstrom. And with the hard work behind them, Eric gets to take in the view.
I can spend all day looking out the window at this section of the world. It's incredible.
At Sonderstrom Air Base, Eric Fuller has scavenged a fuel line from the extra engine.
Okay, Eric, parts in. We're done here. So now we're just gonna button it up, fire it up, and see if there's any leak checks.
Give me high speed.
Fuel flow.
Parallel.
Bring it up, Frank.
Number 4?
Yep.
Coming up on 4. We're dry. So far.
Negative torque, 1 green.
We're still dry.
We discovered the problem, and with this up check, we have no more fuel leakage. We are good to go. We'll probably fly this later on this afternoon.
This Skibird is back online. And with Eric's plane just back from Neem camp, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Kelly will take his place in the hot seat. Kelly flies full-time with a major airline and is a part-time co-pilot for the Air National Guard.
Airline is fantastic, but coming up here, just a challenging environment. It's the only plane in the entire Air Force that does this mission and role.
If Kelly looks tense, he should be. It's exam time. He's in Greenland for his annual Skibird check ride, an airborne grilling that every pilot fears. It's pass or fail.
It's a co-pilot check ride for us for our ski procedures, going into the camps, just make sure that we can do it.
The destination for the evaluation flight is Camp Raven, an abandoned Cold War radar site, now used exclusively as a test ground for Skibird pilots. Lieutenant Colonel George Alston will be the evaluator pilot for this check ride. It's his call if Mike gets to keep his job flying polar missions.
Really going to be watching to make sure that the co-pilot is performing all of his proper procedures and the entire crew to get the aircraft safely on the ground.
The first part of the test, an airborne radar approach that calls for precise coordination on the flight deck.
Everything he does, every word he says, that's really what makes or breaks getting into the airfield from that point. That's where I'm going to be watching the co-pilot intently.
Kelly's task, verify the flags of the skiway, and then set the flaps for landing.
Medium flags are in sight. 11 o'clock, co-pilot has the approach.
The Skibird is on short final with an airspeed of 110 knots.
Gear down, skis down.
It's looking good, until it isn't.
We're overshooting. Leading flag is going below the aircraft. Missed approach point, coming in a little bit low.
30, 20, 10.
George is not impressed, but calls for full power to give him one more chance.
Speed 1-2, commencing takeoff slide. Skiway 17. Go flat throws.
We're going to go out and do the approach one more time just to make sure that we got a really good look at everything that happens in that critical phase there at the end.
When your job is on the line, that's not what you want to hear. If Kelly blows this landing, his career with the Skibirds could be in the past.
Co-pilot has the approach, continue descent, turn right. Continue turning crosswind for a box pattern to skiway 17.
After the second landing, the exam is over. The Skibird sets course for Sunderstrom. If Kelly did any better the second time, George isn't saying. Back on the ground, it's report card time.
Okay, so to sum it up, I thought at the beginning there was a little bit of sloppiness, a little bit of check ride nerves, which is fairly common. I thought you cleaned that up very nicely through the rest of the ride. Overall, a very nice check ride, a Q1, congratulations, go fly.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
The final pull-out mission to Neem is on the flight line. Flying the mission, Aircraft Commander Colonel Gary James and co-pilot Major Nate Morgan.
Let's make sure everybody's signed in.
The Skibird is ready, but the weather isn't ideal.
They've accumulated snow over the last 5 days, and there are patches of snow, drifting snow on the runway, up to 5 inches in depth that could hinder our takeoff.
Here 23, runway 27, you're clear for takeoff. Wind 260 degrees, 4 knots.
Clear for takeoff, runway 27, skew 23.
At Camp Neem, Dorte has also been watching the weather, anxious to get her team out.
Well, we've had very changeable weather today with ground fog coming in with snow and then sunshine, blue sky. So we're actually getting a little worried about the weather.
Nate and Gary take off hoping for the best. An hour outside of Neem, and they're in the dark about exactly what to expect.
I have not spoken to Dorte today. I just tried her on HF, but she's not either monitoring HF or she's not hearing me.
At the camp, Dorte is about to offer an update.
But the weather's not very nice. It's very overcast and it's snowing.
The final pullout from Neem is in trouble. On Greenland's ice cap, the last group of climate scientists are ready to be evacuated. But their Skibird can't land with a low cloud ceiling. It's up to Dorte to let them know if they have the conditions they need to land, or they'll be forced to abort the mission.
When we have a full overcast, as we have now, and when you look at the horizon, you can't see a clear blue sky under the horizon, then it's really difficult for us to judge the elevation of the ceiling. So there's only one way to do it, and that is to use the weather balloons.
The balloon rises at roughly 400 feet per minute. Once it disappears, they can calculate the cloud base.
3 minutes, 40 seconds.
Okay. That means the cloud base is over 1,500 feet. That's really nice.
That's good.
Yeah.
Minutes later, the crew is approaching Neem, but the ceiling has sunk. Once again, the crew will rely on the Skibirds' airborne radar to get them on the skiway.
Radar altimeters.
292, complete. Set 292, consent up. 50.
50.
40. 30. 20. 10.
Flaps coming. Off forward check. Good.
Skier 23, welcome to Neem.
This is it for the Neem scientists. The last scramble to pack up, board up, and get out of town before the weather gets worse. With engines running and fuel burning, the last item, the camp's weather station, is packed away.
That's it.
Thanks. Thanks.
It's been a good season.
Yeah.
It's
very
been
nice.
a really good season. Everything we had decided we would do has actually happened. It's been successful, every single part of it. Replica drilling, deep drilling, flying with the airplane, everything. It's just been perfect season.
It's the final takeoff from Neem. There are snowdrifts on the skiway, and the weather is closing in. Assisted takeoff rockets weren't loaded for this flight, so it will be up to the crew to squeeze every ounce of power from the Skibird to get back in the air.
So I'll be hawking the instruments, making sure we can extract as much power as we can out of the engines, and that helps us accelerate and take off. Why I'm pulling back on the yoke at the same time is we want to kind of protect the nose ski because it's a lot more delicate than the main ski.
You are at 42 knots. Yeah, you keep an eye on those throttles.
What we want to do is reach a certain speed where we can get our nose wheel off the ground. Once that happens, we have a lot less friction and we can accelerate even further and get up.
What I would give for 80 right now. Stalls 81, you're at 85.
Up and off the ice pack, Gary gets them back on course for Sunderstrom Air Base. Cruising along the coast for a spectacular view of Greenland's famous Iceberg Alley. The evacuation mission is finally over for another season. The next logistical nightmare? Getting the planes and people back to the US.
Right now it's a one-man office, just me in the office, and I'm juggling everything. So literally, and hold on one second. Go for ops. I did round the packs up. Packs are en route.
Okay, thank you. It's okay to start engines once they get here?
Once your packs arrive, you are cleared to start engines and cleared to press from there.
You're 7-7. Thanks, Ops. We'll see you back there.
So that's what I got going on. It's just me, and like I said, rounding up people, passengers, cargo, the customers, got to get them up here and interact with them. So yeah, it's a lot to do.
George Alston and his crew are on the second plane out. It looks like they'll be exchanging one extreme weather situation for another.
We're going to have to be maybe picking our way through some thunderstorms as we get over the northeast U.S. Not uncommon for this time of year, actually very common. We should be arriving there early to mid-afternoon, and so that's when thunderstorms build.
India 5-2, runway 27, is good to take off. Clear to take off on 27, here's me.
Here we go, we're rolling.
With George Alston at the controls, the Skibirds say goodbye to Greenland for another year. All that stands between them and a safe arrival back in the US are towering thunderstorms and a sudden threat of airframe icing. The crews of the 109th Airlift Wing and their C-130 Skibirds are homeward bound from Greenland to Schenectady, New York. George Alston is taking the scenic route, a straight line down the spectacular Sunderstrom Fjord.
All right, the weather this morning is going to cooperate, so we get to do one of my favorite things. We're going to fly down the fjord. The fjord here is about 90 miles long, and it was carved out by the ice and glaciers over the millennia, and it is just absolutely stunning. It's actually my favorite thing, even more than flying in over the ice cap.
That's cool.
This is gorgeous. Coastline.
Three hours later, and they're over northern Quebec, flying through a layer of supercooled water droplets that can freeze on impact with the Skibird.
What we're finding is as we're coming farther south from the Arctic down into northern Canada, that's when we're picking up the icing. When your icing gets to a severe state, the weight that it can create is so great on the airplane that it can actually cause you to lose airspeed.
The worst is when you get the mixed or the clear. You get severe clear ice. When you come out of it, it'll just be solid ice all the way around.
The LC-130 uses heat from two sources to combat airframe icing. Heat from the engines is directed to the wings and fuselage, while electrical heat is used to protect the propellers.
We had to use those today to make sure that we kept a nice clean surface to keep the airflow over the wing so that we can reduce the weight and keep the aerodynamics.
George Alston flew Hercs in the Bosnian conflict before joining the Skibirds in the late 90s. Over a decade later, it's still his ideal aircraft.
I think the Herc is like a dump truck. If you think about it, a dump truck's not pretty, it's not fast, but it gets the job done. And that's really what the Hercules does, whether it's the Skibird or the Wheelbird variant. We get it done.
Skier 78, contact Albany approach 132.82. Good day.
132.82.
Co-pilot Pat Newton is hoping to follow in his footsteps.
Any job that you have on this airplane is a good one, and I'm just really excited to be up here and actually living the dream. But a lot of the planes we do fly were on the assembly line before I was born, so they're old planes, and we got to treat them well. Hopefully they'll be around for a while, because I'd like to be doing this for a while.
Albany approach skier 78, 40 miles to the north, level 10,000, request vectors NAB22 stage.
They're now 100 kilometers out and starting their descent into upstate New York, and the weather isn't good.
The thunderstorms are out there at about 60 miles. We're gonna have to work today.
Yep, it's gonna be bumpy, guys.
That's what I was thinking.
A severe weather warning has been issued for the area.
Sam.
Microburst warnings are in effect for Albany.
Thunderstorms are moving from west to east, towards the Skibird's destination, Schenectady County Airport.
It should be moving east, be out of the way by the time we get there, hopefully.
Thunderstorms thrive in cumulonimbus clouds, which can grow over 30,000 feet tall. They're the clouds pilots fear most. Violent updrafts and wind shears can cause structural damage and send even large planes hurtling to the ground.
Go back to like a 2, 3, 5, and then just kind of parallel, because I don't want to get too close to that thunderstorm that range.
The onboard weather radar is invaluable. George skirts the worst of the storms, looking for a clear path to the airport.
Just want to basically pass 20 miles to the right of it.
Eventually, George finds a window in the weather and has enough time to make a dash for the runway.
Skier 78, Schenectady Tower, wind calm, altimeter 2983, runway 22, clear to land.
2983, clear to land on 22, Skier 78.
George makes a final turn and has his Skibird on the home stretch.
Landers down, skis are up, indicators checked, pilot.
Go pilot.
Extra air. Bending light panel.
By now, the climate scientists are back at their labs making sense of their samples. For the Hercs and their crews, it's time to start repacking.
Another successful Greenland mission. Next stop, Antarctica.
In a month's time, they'll be heading to Antarctica, flying resupply missions to climate scientists there. From one pole to the other, the Skibirds are the tool of choice for extreme assignments on snow and ice.